Okay, this is my first official astrological presentation, so don't shoot me if I get it wrong, but I'm just going to give this a whirl and see how we go. So what I'm doing tonight is I'm doing a presentation on my take on the total solar eclipse that's happening on August 21st, 2017. The first chart that I have cast is for the Queen Ahead Oregon. It's geocentric, tropical, equal house, true node. Okay, so eclipses always usher in new beginnings and change, and these changes can be subtle and play out over extended periods of time, or they may be instantaneous depending on the elements, modes, and planetary alignments. The eclipse on August 21st, I feel, is going to be felt by humanity almost instantly, both internally and in the physical world. I personally think that as of August 21st, 2017, we have stepped fully into the age of Aquarius. We've been on the cusp for the last 100 or so years, give or take, but with this eclipse, we have now officially left the age of Pisces. Just a note too, before I start getting right into the presentation, we should all know by now that the so-called planets, inverted commas, are actually and should more accurately be referred to as the wandering stars. But for the purpose of ease and what most of us have come to know of them as, I'll mainly refer to them as planets in this presentation. So as I said, the first chart that I cast was for the point in the United States at which the eclipse first crosses within the totality range, and it's in Queen Ahead, Oregon at 10:16 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time. So this chart gives an overview of how the energies will play out across the United States and other areas to which totality is covered. Also, I've cast a chart for my hometown in southeast Queensland, Australia. The signs and most of the planetary aspects are the same, although due to the difference in location, the configuration of planets are in different house areas, which means that the energies generated by the eclipse will play out in different ways to some degree in Australia as opposed to the United States. But I'll go into this in more detail later in the presentation. So for now, let's just look at how the energies express themselves on the whole for the entire plane, realm, or whatever you wish to call where humanity as a whole resides. So the element of fire here, this is where we're looking at in the 11th house. Being in Leo, Leo is a fire sign, so fire is very predominant and extremely strong in this chart with the sun, the moon, Mercury, Mars, and the North Node, also known as Rahu. They're all in the sign of Leo. Actually, sorry, Mercury's not. It's in Virgo, but the rest are in Leo. So the fire element is related to spirit and expresses dynamically, energetically, courageously, creatively, and inspirationally. Negatively expressed, however, fire energy can be projected aggressively, selfishly, and foolishly. What this means for humanity is that this eclipse is bringing forth higher spiritual forces and is raising our energies and creative levels. How we choose to use this heightened energy and creativity will determine what materializes for us. If we use the energy foolishly, it can have the potential to create strife, turmoil, and possibly even war. Individually, we need to focus our attention and thoughts on beneficent creative pursuits and refrain from engaging in lower vibrational, malevolent endeavours. Fire energy has a capacity to bring about great change extremely swiftly, So it would be well for us to all monitor our intentions and actions and ensure the coming changes are not destructive. The water element is also, although not as dominant as the fire, is a strong point of the eclipse chart. Water relates to the emotional plane. We have here the MC in Cancer, which is a water sign. Venus in Cancer, a water sign. We have Neptune and Chiron in Pisces, water signs. But yeah, mainly this MC alignment here in Cancer brings about quite strong water energy. So although water is not as dominant as fire, it's also strong in the chart, and it relates to the emotional plane and brings about intuition, sensitivity, and fluidity. Water puts out fire, so it may temper some of the aggressiveness which the fire element normally possesses. In this first chart for the United States location, the Sun, Moon, Mercury, and Mars and the North Node are all in the 11th house, as I stated before up here. The 11th house is naturally ruled by Aquarius, and this house represents clubs, organisations, relationships with friends and groups of people, creative activities, humanitarianism, the hierarchy, social reform, revolutionaries, political activities and activism, ideals, hopes and dreams. In Theosophy, the 11th house also represents the new group of world servers. So the placement of this grouping of luminaries and wandering stars in the 11th house here indicates that the eclipse is going to usher in much change and reform with regards to large organisations, government bodies, and humanity as a whole. Naturally ruled by Aquarius, as I stated before, who is the philosopher, the thinker, and the gateway to the higher mind and intellect. I feel more and more people at this time are breaking free from mass illusion and will be able to employ critical thinking in order to raise the collective vibration. However, with Mercury retrograde here until September the 5th, there may be difficulties in articulating, communicating, and free thinking. So the fog should lift once this planet goes direct, but until such time we can expect issues with electrical appliances, communication, and technological devices, as well as difficulties in clear thinking and communicating ourselves. The Mercury-Neptune opposition is also indicative of deception, unclear communication, and a tendency to fantasize, particularly strengthened due to Neptune being in its natural sign of Pisces. There's going to be a real pull from the seen and unseen forces to try to keep us in the Piscean mindset. Neptune is also retrograde, so its energies are internalized even more so than the usual hidden tendencies of this planet's influence. Great effort is needed to ensure we have discernment when it comes to communication in all its forms. I see this as currently being played out in the deceit and propaganda within the world's media outlets, as I'm sure all of us are well aware. The moon is both trine Saturn down here and Uranus over here. And the sun is also trine Uranus. So this is indicative of new, innovative and unorthodox structures and laws coming into play. Freedom of expression and unconventional enterprising ideas are the name of the game. Great social change is upon us and the timing is just right. So nothing can stop the breakdown of the old system and the ushering in of the new. The sextile that Mars is making with Jupiter, Mars is here, Jupiter's here. Jupiter being in Libra, will bring about expansive growth, vision, wisdom, justice, and balance. In fact, This chart has Libra on the ascendant, ruling the first house. So humanity as a whole, as well as on an individual level, will see great change to the justice and education systems and also to transportation. The North Node is conjunct the Sun and the Moon and Mars. If you watched Santos Bonacci's recent videos regarding the eclipse, he explains that it's in fact Rahu, or the North Node of the Moon, that is actually the true cause of the eclipse and not the Moon itself. And this makes perfect sense. The new Moon and Sun are always conjunct each month. So if the heliocentric model was correct, technically we'd experience the eclipse every 28 or so days. This is not the case. So the new moon actually goes behind the sun, and that explains its disappearance for the 2 days at this time of its cycle. The north node is the point at which the moon's path crosses the ecliptic on its way up to the new moon phase, and the south node is where it crosses the ecliptic as it comes back down to the full moon phase. In astrology, the nodes are karmic in nature. The south node represents the tendencies and traits fully developed in previous times or lives and is the path of least resistance. The north node is where current attention and future projection is needed to balance things out, so to speak. They are always in opposition in astrological charts. So we actually have the south node down here in the 5th house in Aquarius, even though it's not printed up on this chart. So this house, the 5th house where the south node is, represents, among other things, sports, hobbies, theatre, pleasure, and personal will. These themes play a huge role in the psyche of most Americans. It's become almost automatic to engage in sporting events, movies, theatrics, and pleasure activities. The United States also exerts extreme personal will, collectively as a nation. Focus on these activities and power needs to shift to more humanitarian endeavours. The bigger cosmic picture has more to do with humanity triumphing than it does about who wins the national finals in the sports arena or who gets the Oscar. The south node in Aquarius can bring with it a detachment from life, dogmatic tendencies through rigidity, and intellectual superiority. The north node in Leo is wanting to move forward, developing true intelligence, self-empowerment, and leading with the heart in a benevolent manner. The north node in Leo in the 11th house, conjunct the Sun, Moon, and Mars, means humanity's will towards anthropic goals is fierce and strong. We are collectively no longer happy to play games and just be entertained. We wish to engage in more important pursuits like stopping world hunger, creating peace on Earth, and raising the vibration of the species. Those who dig their heels in and keep turning a blind eye, continuing to couch potato glued to the sports channel, are in for a massive shock. Humanity is awakening, and at a great rate of knots. As the old systems crumble, only those who have foresight of the new paradigm are going to flourish. It will be their responsibility to shine the torch along the path for the stragglers to follow. So next we'll look at the chart for the south. It's not letting me bring it up in full, so I'll just have to look at it here. Okay. I had trouble before trying to bring this chart up as well. No, it's not going to let me. Okay, well, hopefully you can see that chart there anyway. So this is actually the chart that I've cast for my hometown. So for those of us in Australia and the so-called Southern Hemisphere in general, the luminaries and planets, even though having the same configuration and aspects, are placed in different houses. This affects us in different ways to our brothers and sisters in the so-called North. Also, the fact that we will be unable to view the eclipse from Australia means that the energies generated by it will somewhat be diminished. It doesn't mean, however, that we won't be affected by it at all. So this chart has Cancer on the ascendant, and the first house is ruled by Cancer. And you've got Venus situated in the first house. So Cancer is ruled by the moon and is nurturing, protective, sensitive and healing. And perhaps those of us in this part of the world may be called to help heal and have empathy for those more directly affected by the strong energies generated by the eclipse. Venus, the planet of love, values, relationships, beauty and art, is calling us to bring those traits into our personal lives. Love heals and values override unworthiness. Art and beauty lift the spirit. The hard aspects of Venus to Jupiter and Venus to Uranus, seen in both the charts, indicate a block to the expression of real love, tendencies to be overindulgent, and have a restless lack of commitment. This is indicating that humanity on the whole needs to focus on selflessness and discipline in order to move forward without difficulties. The square aspects of Pluto with Jupiter, also in both charts, indicate that intense will and power try to block expansiveness. It is also indicative of great dissatisfaction with society and the desire to radically change things. This has been playing out on the world stage for some time. The current establishment are doing all they can to stop the human spirit expand. Drawing on the extremely powerful energies of the eclipse in Leo will overcome this problem, but we need to have intent and focus. In the Australian chart, the Sun, Moon, Mercury, Mars and North Node are all located in the second house. This house represents values, possessions, money, banking, business, gains and losses, resources, and the practical things in life. It will be those areas that are most affected in this part of the world as well as generally for humanity. Perhaps with system changes in the United States, it will affect commerce, particularly for Australia. In the United States chart, the MC or the midheaven, so I'll just flick back to it there, is in Cancer. So this is indicative of world healing. The life goals for individuals will be more focused on healing and will reflect a more sensitive, nurturing nature. The United States psyche would do well to becoming more motherly and sensitive. In the Australian chart, the MC or midheaven is in the sign of Aries. I find it ironic as it is indicating that Australians on a whole need to be bolder, more powerful, courageous and assertive. It would do the Australian psyche to ditch the apathetic she'll be right mate attitude and adopt more initiative, leadership skills and taking the proverbial bull by the horns. So it seems that the eclipse is tempering down the aggressiveness of America and asking the Australian psyche to actually become more, not aggressive, but a little bolder, I guess. Most of the energies generated by the placement of the luminaries and planets in these zodiacal charts will play out long after the actual eclipse is over. At the actual time of the eclipse, whether we believe it is the moon covering the sun, or more likely Rahu, or the North Node, we need to stand strong and firm with intent and will as to what we wish to bring about for humanity. The sun represents will, self-empowerment, identity, and vitality. Because these energies will be covered temporarily in the eclipse, we need to focus on retaining these traits individually and collectively. The powers that should not be will be doing their darndest to hold humanity back. They'll employ all sorts of trickery, deception, and malevolent forces. So we need to concentrate on keeping our vibration raised and visualize with clear intent that we are bringing about heaven on earth. So I hope you understood a little bit about what I was trying to convey here in this reading. If you need any more information on the eclipse or to attain a copy of this reading, or even if you want to inquire about personal readings, you can email me at a_McLeod, that's MCLEOD 7 @hotmail.com. And don't forget to click like and subscribe to my channel, 7 Raven Wolf, if you haven't already. Thanks, guys. Peace out.